Can you live forever? This is a question that human beings have been seeking from the beginning of time. The pharaohs of old, who buried their wives and their families with them in the hope of eternity, to cryogenic freezing of our DNA today, and many other bizarre, strange attempts for the fountain of youth for some eternity. Is it possible? The pharmaceutical industry, Botox, plastic surgery, all attempts to somewhat impede the aging process. But has anyone figured out how to conquer death? The ultimate end of mortal life. Everyone wants to make an impact in this universe, wants to leave their mark, eternal mark. Is that possible? So please join me in this discussion that affects us all. Can you live forever? The spiritual formula for eternal life. Hi, this is Simon Jacobson, and we will be speaking about Can You Live Forever? The spiritual formula for eternal life. This program is dedicated by Aurelia Zander in honor of her wedding anniversary. From the beginning of time, humans have always searched for the fountain of youth, the ability to achieve eternity, to live forever. The pharaohs of old built pyramids, buried their wives and families alive with them when they died, in the hope that that would give them eternity. All the way to modern day cryogenic freezing of cells of DNA, all in the hope to live on. Can we conquer death? Can we conquer mortality? Every person wants to leave a mark in this world, wants to feel that their lives were significant. Something lives on after and beyond you. Is that realistic? And how can we achieve it? Bizarre methods have been tried and attempted. I mean, the billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry, whether it's Botox or plastic surgery or all other methods, are all some type of attempt to impede, slow down the aging process. But has anyone learned to conquer death, mortality? So let's talk about this, because it's a matter that affects us all, sometimes more consciously than other times. But it's fascinating to see a perspective that goes back thousands of years. And the answer is indeed you can, but you have to look at life very differently than you think life is. If you define life in a physical way, meaning biologically your heart is beating, your brain is working, well, we know today, yes, we have doubled life expectancy. People live today to 80 years old average, 75 years old, whatever the numbers are, men and women. It's double from what it was a century ago. And with medical breakthroughs, there's no reason to believe that we won't be able to extend that expectancy. But it seems like there will be a ceiling. But as long as you define life in a physical way, then can you prolong physical life? Can we replace body parts? Will DNA be able to be regenerated? Even resurrected? But perhaps we have to look at life differently. What defines life? Is life purely the mechanical, biological definition? Because you could find someone that has influence long after they're gone. Indeed, I grew up as a child with the biblical stories of Abraham and Sarah, Adam and Eve, and other great men and women that are not here on this earth already thousands of years, and yet I can tell you about their lives, lessons learned, moral guidance. So is that not an eternal impact? So what really defines eternity? So if you define life a certain way, yes, you may never be able to create an eternal aspect of mortality as we know it. Now we know there's the concepts of, in faith, of resurrection, of eternal life, but I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about something that we can understand the nature as we see it right now. And I will talk about that a bit more soon. What we have to do is revisit the very definition of life. And I'll quote a Talmudic statement. It says the following, talking about the biblical Jacob. So in the Bible, when it talks about his passing, you never hear the word death is never used. So the Talmud says Jacob did not die. And of course, the sages immediately ask, what do you mean? Didn't they bury him? Didn't they eulogize him? Didn't they embalm him? And the Talmud replies, just as his children are alive, so too is he alive. Interesting. So it means that he didn't die. It doesn't mean he didn't physically pass. It means that something about him lives on. Or maybe the main thing about him, his children are alive, he's alive. Another statement that the righteous, even in their deaths, they're called alive. The wicked, even in their lifetimes, they're called dead. You ever hear someone say, how are you feeling? I feel like a walking dead. I feel like a zombie. You can be biologically alive, but you can feel emotionally dead, intellectually dead, not stimulated, not motivated. Feel like you don't want to be here. So life is much more than just the biological function of a beating heart and a ticking brain. And since we're already in the heart, the brain, and the courage of a lion, citing the Wizard of Oz, life is a lot more than that. Spirit, the spirit of the person. And it's something that's a little more mysterious. Because biological, physical, mechanical life is easier to quantify. How do you quantify spiritual life? But here's the key thing. The soul never dies. The body dies, not the soul. That means that if you can connect to the soul and you live a soulful life, you never die. But a soulful life is very different than a physical life. A soulful life is a life driven not by you and your ego, not by you and your needs, not by you and your immediate and instant gratification. It's about a purpose greater than yourself. And that purpose is eternal. And therefore, when you live a life following that, you become an extension of that eternity. Yes, when you're dedicated to yourself, you can be a great person, achieve great things, but there's always a limit. There's always a ceiling. There's a finite parameter. But if you're dedicated to a cause greater than yourself, you become an extension of that. And if that greater than yourself is infinite and eternal, you become an extension of eternity. That's what it means as his children were alive, he was alive. That the righteous, even in their deaths, they're alive. Because even when they were here physically, biologically, their life was not driven by their physical presence. It was driven by their spiritual presence, by their faith, by their love, by their reverence, by their values, by what they taught others. That never goes away. So it all depends on how you define your life. You project, you write your own script. If your life is a life that primarily worships and is identified by the physical, which is mortal, with a beginning and end, that is your life. But if your life is defined by the immortal, by the eternal, that you're embodying eternal and immortal values, and you're teaching them, and you're perpetuating them through your family, through your children, through your friends, through everyone you come in contact with, that, by definition, is forever. But it's the sad statement that the Talmud makes. It always brings me to tears, to be very honest. It says, people, alas, that people will choose temporary life over eternal life. It seems bizarre, seems odd. If you had eternity and something temporary, what would you choose? Of course you choose the eternal, and yet we don't. Because the temporary, the immediate, is so compelling, so seductive, so powerful, that you don't think about tomorrow or forever. How many mistakes have we made in our lives because of the moment? Had we thought about the consequences, had we recognized the consequences, we would never have acted that way. So why is that the case? That the case, the answer to that, my friends, we go back to the great mystics, and especially Rabbi Isaac Luria, the Arizal, who introduced, even though the concept was there, but he really introduced the concept of tzimtzum, this cosmic concealment, a fundamental layer, membrane, if you wish, that conceals reality, true reality. Think of it this way. There's a hand and a glove. Imagine you forget about the hand, you only see the glove. An inverted reality, an inverted consciousness, if you wish, where we see the outer and we don't always recognize the inner. So we see ourselves as an independent consciousness, and we seek. Maybe we find, maybe we don't find, maybe we question. When in truth is the other way around. There's a deeper reality that we don't experience with our sensory tools. And what we see and experience is only the tip of the iceberg, the glove. But imagine worshiping the peel and forgetting about the fruit within. That's the exact analogy that's given. So when you're focused on that and you're living on the level of the peel, of the orange peel, and you forget about the orange, so of course you've defined your destiny. That's your script. Whereas somebody that recognizes the eternal fruit and recognizes the infinite layers of energy. Do we know how many layers? Let's even talk about physical energy. We know today that matter as we see it is only the outer surface. All matter is made up of elements. Elements are made up of molecules. Molecules out of atoms. Atoms out of subatomic particles. Subatomic particles, sub. How far down the rabbit hole can we go? Sub. How far down? So anyone will say, even if you got great knowledge, we have no idea. For all we know, it's endless. How far out in outer space can we go? Especially if it's an expanding universe. And that's purely on a physical level. Add the spiritual dimension, and it clearly is endless. But it's only when you tap into that. If you live on the surface level, we would never have known about atomic energy or nuclear energy or any form of quantum energy and so on. Now that we do, we suddenly realize the power. How much energy is there in one follicle of hair? Even less than that. But it's concentrated and it's invisible to the naked eye, and we don't experience it with our senses. So how much more so when you talk about the spirit? But you have to tap into it, because if not, it remains trapped, or you can say locked or hidden beneath the surface. And when you do tap into it, you're tapping into eternity. But not many people have done this in their lifetimes. Even though you think that would be the ultimate investment. Invest short-term for long-term, for eternal benefit. Because the short-term is so seductive again, so powerful, that it preoccupies your life. Think about money. Think about power and influence. Right now, as we speak, how many people are consumed with their immediate needs? And they think if I make enough money, I'll be the happiest person. And that's more important than everything. If you say to them, here, for all your money, I'll give you eternity. No, I'd choose the money. Because with money, I'll be able to buy eternity or whatever you deceive yourself into thinking. That's the power of the Tzimtzum. That's the power that even though it doesn't make any sense, why would you choose the temporary over the permanent? The moment over the eternal. Because that's what we're convinced of thinking, that what I see right now, that's all that matters. It's the only thing I know. And when you do discover those inner dimensions, you realize, wow, it's a different world. It's like someone living in a cave, in a dark cave all their lives, and one day they go and see there's a world outside the cave. And then they climb up on a mountain and they see there's even beyond that. And then a higher mountain. And as the higher they go, they see what kind of horizons they didn't even know was possible, let alone that it exists, that what it's like. They didn't even know it's possible. They couldn't fathom it. That's who you are. Because you're a piece of the divine. You're a piece of the eternal, and you're a piece of the infinite. Waiting to be unleashed. That's the secret, my friends. That's the spiritual formula to eternal life. That when you commit to those values that are beyond your own needs and interests, that's eternity. The more it's about you and your immediate needs, that's the opposite of eternity. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't satisfy our needs. We need to eat and drink and sleep and rest and get our physical needs met and so on. Friendships. But don't think it's all only that. That's the part of keeping the functionality going. What you really stand for, what you should be fighting for, is the eternal values that you stand for. I'm so saddened when I hear people tell me, I don't think I'm going to bring children into this world. I don't want to bring children into a world like this. What kind of world? A world like I came into. I don't want to treat my children like my parents treated me. So you ready to stop the continuation, the perpetuation of your life, of your legacy? Because you don't want to hurt them? So don't hurt them. The sad part is that giving up the whole future. It'll end with you. Now, I'm not here advocating, I'm not telling anyone what to do, but I think about it in the term the blessing to be able to perpetuate. And not just to bring your genes into this world. I'm not talking about from a biological or natural selection perspective. I'm talking about from a value perspective. And even on a selfish level, that's your permanence, that's your future, they will perpetuate, continue what you've taught them. And then I remember someone telling me, well, I don't have much to teach them. That saddened me even more. You have nothing to teach them? You don't have anything of value to offer? This takes us back to why we're here, the purpose of our lives. So when I think, it's awesome. When I think of the connection of a link of being a child of a parent who was a child of a parent before him or her, going back in an unbroken link, unbroken chain, that's eternity. And that you're able to continue the traditions and the legacy and the values that continue to transform the world. That's like being in a marathon with one generation passing on the baton to the next, one leg to the next, in an ongoing, unbroken chain. I mean, that's eternity. Why the pharaohs of old or the modern cryogenics industry and so on don't get that? Maybe they're looking, firstly they define things in the physical terms. They're looking for a quick fix. This requires commitment, obviously. So the choice is yours at any given moment. Every moment offers you two options. Am I going to turn this moment into something eternal? Or will the moment come and go? Maybe not destructive, but something temporary and passes on. You have that power. You can bring a moment alive. You help someone the next moment. That help perhaps will perpetuate forever. whether they recognize it or not, but it can change a person's life and the trajectory of their life and the life of their children, the life of the future. You have the ability to change things. I think about the words of the Baal Shem Tov, the great mystic, that God leads the footsteps of a person. Wherever you go, you were led there in order to create something eternal from a moment, something infinite from a space. Yes, to draw down the immortal into the mortal, the extraordinary within the ordinary. To use Blake's terms, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. You have that power. And how do you do so? You help someone. That the next moment, instead of taking care of your own needs, you stretch out your arm, you help someone, your hand is holding infinity. Because you help that person, in turn that person will be changed. The butterfly, domino, ripple effect. Awesome power that has. And that does not in any way contradict serving your immediate needs. One thing is not connected to the other. Serving, there are things you do as means, but then there's the bigger picture. You commute to work. You share a kind word with someone, even though that's not why you're commuting to go to work. But that kind word suddenly turns that commute into something eternal. And the same thing, you can find examples galore in your life. It's about paying attention and acting on it. And then indeed, as your children are alive, so too are you alive. And children include students, people you've influenced, people you inspire. Even one person, even one thing that you inspire someone has that butterfly effect. And it's in your hands. All of us have that power. I think about it today, we have so much power in technology. And yet, like they always said about technology, junk in, junk out, garbage in, garbage out. Technology is an awesome strength, but depends what you're putting into it. It will amplify whatever you insert into it. If it's nonsense, you'll have amplified nonsense. If it's good, you'll have amplified good. The ability to reach so many people quickly, transcending time and space. That itself is an eternal element, transcending time and space, but what are you using it for? So we have great, great blessings today, great, great opportunities. We have challenges too. The greatest challenge is apathy, taking our blessings for granted. Someone told me the other day, yes, I understand life expectancy has gone up, but what am I doing with my life? What do I need more years for? With the potential of getting ill and incapacitated, God forbid, and so on. So I say, so fill your life with content. But again, we live in a materialistic world. It's all about putting away enough money for your retirement. And what do you do when you retire? Like the famous one, with a guy in a little town, loves to fish every day. In the morning, he goes out fishing. One day, this entrepreneur comes to town and he sees this guy fishing so calmly, beautiful. And he sees he's really good at it. Catches fish, goes over to him and says to him, hey, how long have you been living in this town? He says, my whole life. He says, you know the water is well here? He says, yeah, very well. What type of fish? Where? Yeah, I see you do. He says, sure. Maybe you want to go into business with me. He says, what's the point? He says, here, you're fishing right now. I'll invest some money and we'll fish, and all the extra fish you catch that you don't need, we'll sell and we'll split the profit. And then what, he says? Then we're successful, we'll rent a boat and we'll go out fishing, we'll catch even more fish and sell them, make more money. And then what? Then we'll rent a fleet. Then we'll buy a fleet. And then we'll rent and we'll hire people to go out fishing. We won't even have to go fish. They'll do it all and we'll be raking the money in. And then what? He says, then we will retire very wealthy with all the money we've made. And then what? And then we'll go fishing. So the fellow says, I'm fishing right now. So I'm already doing so. So sometimes life is that way. I remember we used to go to a pizza shop once in a while. It was a Romanian baker. He was a professional baker. He made this delicious pizza. I remember him telling me, he said to me in Yiddish, he said, you live half your life making money, then the other half of your life spending it on medical bills. It's interesting how life evolves. However, we can introduce eternity into our lives, the infinite, the immortal, and we have that ability to do so. That's how you live forever. This has been Simon Jacobson, meaningfullife.com. If you've enjoyed this, found this meaningful, please share it with others. Yes, share. It's another way of perpetuating eternity. Love to hear your feedback, your comments, your thoughts, suggestions. Please subscribe to our offerings, to our YouTube channel. Be blessed, and yes, leave your eternal mark in this world. We need it. You need it. The whole world needs it. Be well.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate. This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.